Hold on to your wallet because you're about to find out where huge chunks of your hard-earned taxpayer funds are about to go. In fact, they've already been going in this direction for a long time. They're about to increase. I called it a long time ago and I find it absolutely staggering. So I will keep calling this out and saying it like it is. So if you like this brutally honest analysis of what's really going on, much of which the mainstream media just won't say, please do subscribe to the channel, even if you're not new to me. But if you are new to me, I'm Daniel Smith, a barrister of England and Wales, and I've decided I'd like to help you understand law and call out all of this stuff in news, politics and events and explain it like it really is. So thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate it. Let's head straight to the posts and some of the articles that have triggered this video today. And it starts with this sort of post here, because there are numerous posts like this. This one from the Home Office: almost 50,000 illegal migrants removed or deported. Now, they say removed or deported. I think they've tweaked and changed the wording somewhat because some commentators, myself included, have called out the fact that they are somewhat misleading sometimes, because actually, in actual fact, out of the 50,000 figure that they quote to you there, only about 8,000 or 9,000, depending on from when and to when you take the statistics, only about 8,000 or 9,000 are what they call enforced removals, which is where they physically put them on a plane or whatever and they remove them from the UK. The vast, vast majority of them are voluntary returns. Now, here's a really important point, because some of them, they just write to them and tell them that you need to leave and they leave. Some of them, they are paying to leave. Now, I called this before it was confirmed, but it is confirmed. In fact, on this page here, which I've quoted before, it says, get help to return home if you're a migrant in the UK. You can usually apply for help to return home, which is a voluntary return, if any of the following are true. You're in the UK illegally, or you've overstayed a visa or whatever, withdrawn or made a claim for asylum in the UK, all those sort of things, and you want to voluntarily return as opposed to being an enforced return. And as you can see here from the government's own statistics, this is only up to September 2025. The year ending September 25, there were 27,075 voluntary returns, each of whom may have received some kind of payment, because as it says here, you can get help to return home. Now you go to another page and it says here, you may also be eligible to apply for financial support of up to £3,000 to return home. You can use this to find somewhere to live, find a job, or start a business in your own home country. So here's £3,000 for each individual to leave and to start a life back in another country. They then say you may not be able to come back to the UK. You'll be banned from coming back. But of course, if they came back illegally, then obviously they are back here again, and we are back where we started. That's not the only problem, because this has been put to ministers in the form of questions and such, and it has now been confirmed in an interview with The Telegraph that this amount of money is going to go up, because a Labour MP wants to model this on the Denmark system, which offers asylum seekers between £5,000 and £24,000 to return home. Now, although the Labour Minister Alex Norris, who's the Border Security and Asylum Minister, refused to put a specific figure on it, he did say that it would be not more than £10,000. So at the moment, they offer them £3,000 per person to leave the UK. I'm not sure how many are actually paid this amount out of the 27,075 voluntary returns to the year ending September 2025. Maybe all of them, I don't know, but I would suspect a large chunk of them are paid this amount of money to return home, find a job, start a business and whatever. Some of them we know have returned back to the UK. However many that have returned back that we don't know about is anybody's guess, because after all, they've lost track of 53,298 illegal migrants that have come to the UK, and we don't know where they are. Over 700 of them are foreign criminals. These were figures confirmed back to Rupert Lowe MP. So over 53,000 illegal migrants in the UK we have no idea about. They've just disappeared. But, as I say, there are 27,000 voluntary returns, each of whom might have been paid around the £3,000 figure, and Labour now confirms that this is going to go up significantly, but will be not more than £10,000. In an interview with The Telegraph, he defended the plans to offer failed asylum seekers and foreign offenders big increase from the £3,000 to persuade them to voluntarily return to their home country. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I think a lot of people are of a mind now to leave the UK with what's going on. And a lot of people might be interested in the £3,000 or even the £10,000 to leave the UK. But obviously that is not open to everyone else in the UK. Only those, of course, who are here illegally. And personally, I find that somewhat staggering. Now, coming up in this video, another way that they're going to spend your money and snitching on your neighbours, perhaps. You know, one thing I really love is social proof, because when someone tells you something that worked for them, you tend to believe it. And then when more people tell you, you believe it even more. So whilst I'm telling you about a product here, I'm telling you that lots of people have contacted me to tell me that Saily has worked really well for them, because I've promoted Saily and partnered with Saily on my channel here. Saily is a mobile internet service which provides data by access by an eSIM, so you do not have to wait for a bit of plastic to arrive in the post. It's just seamlessly integrated on your device. It gives you fast access to the internet when you're traveling around in hundreds of countries. You simply download an app. It is available for when you travel, you buy a plan, and it will activate on arrival. It came up again in conversation just recently when someone asked me, how is it that I was able to upload videos when I was in China? Well, Saily came to the rescue there, because Saily gave me quick access to the internet to upload my videos. And not only that, because it's powered by NordVPN, it also gives you the security features such as scanning websites and scanning downloads for malicious scripts and content and things like that as well. So I've had a number of conversations in the last week. Since I mentioned it on one of my last videos, people have since contacted me and said, I use Saily as well, and it is really working. So the proof really is in numbers, and you can get 15% off any plan you choose to buy using my code BlackBeltBarrister at the checkout, and you can use that on any plan you choose to buy. You don't need to pay anything straight away. You can download the app to begin with, but when you choose to buy a plan, you can get 15% off using BlackBeltBarrister, so that you will know that wherever you travel, you will have quick access to the internet. No more worrying about whether your provider will provide roaming services for you. It will just work. And that's how I like things to be. So thank you to all of you that have contacted me to tell me that you've used Saily. I really do appreciate that. Now back to ways the government is going to spend your money and how HMRC wants you to snitch on your neighbours. This is a bit of a strange one because it's popped up a few weird headlines. Now, no heavy criticism, GB News, but this is very slightly misleading in that it says households could get thousands by snitching on neighbours in HMRC tax crackdown. It's technically correct, but it doesn't mean that every street up and down the UK you can snitch on your neighbours because they've missed a £30 payment to the revenue or whatever. It's not quite like that. It's technically true, but it doesn't apply to just every single household across the country. What it does apply to, however, is the reporting serious tax avoidance or evasion under the strengthened reward scheme for reporting serious tax avoidance or evasion and how to send a report. Now, what they say is you could get up to between 15% and 30%. So you're on a commission of sorts. You could get between 15 and 30% of the tax collected if you provide information to HMRC that leads to a collection of at least £1.5 million in tax, excluding the penalties and interest and whatever. You cannot get a reward if you're a civil servant or if you're a taxpayer involved in the tax evasion or avoidance. So you can't commit the fraud and then report it and get the benefit that way, obviously. The reward might directly or indirectly lead to funding illegal activity or all sorts of other exclusions. Now, I think a lot of people might have a bit of a moral difficulty in reporting a neighbour, say, if they know that they've earned, £30 on the side and not reported it to HMRC. I'm not saying that that's correct, by the way. You should report everything you earn in the proper way. Some people would report it and think that every single penny should, and everyone should be reported if they don't report that to HMRC properly. I mean, let me know in the comments, are you a reporter or a non-reporter? Do you have a moral difficulty with reporting people, or have you got no problem with that at all and you'd report anyone if you know that something's wrong? But this doesn't quite apply to everyone in that sense. This is applying where you provide information that leads to the collection of at least £1.5 million in tax, which is a significant amount of money. Think about it, in tax, the amount of turnover and profit that they would have to do to owe £1.5 million in tax is quite significant. So it's not quite snitching on your neighbour, as GB News puts it here. It is technically correct. It depends on what street you live and whether your neighbour's living in a £20 million mansion or whatever, and you know that they're running some kind of business and not paying tax, and you provide information that leads to the collection of £1.5 billion in tax. You could then be on for a commission of 15 to 30%. And forgive me for those that have got absolute attention to detail and can't possibly stand this letter not being highlighted here. I've now corrected that for you so you can rest at ease. I'm like that, so I don't blame you in the slightest. But this all a little bit strange. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Also from GB News, it happens to be HSBC bans staff from wearing Christmas jumpers amid fears of triggering customers. Now, you might be forgiven for jumping to the conclusion that it is triggering people that don't support Christmas or Christianity. That's not quite the case. They say somewhere around here that it's people who are going through difficult times during the festive period might be triggered by other people wearing knitwear. Now, I find that a little bit bizarre. I mean, I wore my Christmas jumper yesterday and I think the day before. In fact, it's over there behind me somewhere and I'll probably wear it again tomorrow. But I don't think, let me know in the comments, I don't think people are going to be triggered by me wearing a Christmas sweater. Quite the opposite. In fact, over the years, I'm very pleased to say that I've had a number of people write in, like physically write in sometimes, and tell me that I've brought great comfort to them and to their loved ones, and even some loved ones that they've lost. And they've said that they've watched my stuff over the years, and it's brought them great joy. And they continue to do so. And I just don't think a Christmas jumper is going to have that effect. I do wonder whether there is any other kind of deeper, real meaning that has caused HSBC to ban Christmas jumpers. But again, I find that a little bit bizarre. And the final story for this video is a little bit of I told you so. Do you remember the VAT on school fees, which I promised I will keep talking about and bring you updates on? Well, turns out I was right in that they will miss the targets for recruitment of the teachers that they promised they would fund with the VAT on private schools. Now, not only did they move the goalposts and exclude primary schools from their initial targets, but despite reducing their overall targets by 20%, they have still missed their recruitment targets, despite taxing private schools an additional 20% in order to fund the additional 6,500 teachers. Despite all of that, they have missed their own targets by 12%. And that is, as I say, despite slashing that target by a fifth because they excluded primary schools. This is from the National Education Union, who quotes its General Secretary, Daniel Kabid, who says an increase in teacher trainees is welcome, but there's no room for complacency. A quarter of newly qualified teachers quit within 3 years, which, as I said before, this shows that the problems lie elsewhere and not just in the funding, and that the funding by itself is not going to fix the problem. Thus, it wasn't justified to tax private schools, even though they promised every penny that was going to go towards that cause and didn't in the end, but that's another story. He says, the causes are self-evident: unmanageable workload, low pay, high levels of stress caused by excessive accountability measures with the toxic Ofsted. The DfE should not kid itself that the recruitment and retention crisis is solved with all these problems continue to exist in our schools. Despite all of that, Bridget Phillipson said, this is evidence that we are making strong progress. But Daniel goes on, the DfE has missed its own recruitment target for secondary trainee teachers by 12%, despite slashing the target by a fifth. This is far from unusual. It is the 12th time secondary targets have been missed in the last 13 years. The effects are harming education and generations of students. So this just shows that the government has got this completely wrong, in that they are attacking private schools to, in their eyes, to fund teachers for the state's school system. And yet there are fundamental problems within the state school system. And so not only are they not really fixing this problem, evidently, but they are also damaging the private sector, which I think is abhorrent. It's a double whammy. And at the same time, as I said in my last video, which yesterday, I think, I lose track, but yesterday, I think, where I said that despite the fact that the government's trying to tell you that they are supporting SEND children with special educational needs and disabilities, they have displaced tens of thousands of them from the private sector, and thus evidently they are not supporting those children and trying to tell you that they are. This is why I will keep talking about these things, because I cannot stand the misleading approach and the misleading posts, even down to one of the first stories in this video, 50,000 removed, but most of which are voluntary, and they're paying them to leave. And I think the whole thing is disgraceful. Let me know what you think in the comments, but I will keep calling it out. And as always, thank you for watching.